Good morning, everybody. I think I'm very happy to be here to speak in front of you again. It's been 5 years since last time Mr. Murad invited me to speak in Steel Orbis. Thank you very much, Mr. Murad, for your invitation. Today, I will speak about what's going on in ASEAN. We also put through some analysis about what's going on there and what are the external factors that are affecting ASEAN today. Many of them, and some of the slides I think are repeated from the previous speaker, so I can skip them. CRC is the representative of the steel industry in the 7 largest ASEAN economies. Right? So the members of the 7 largest ASEAN economies in terms of steel are referring to Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam are our members. Right, so we are the bulk of the steel producers in ASEAN. Okay, ASEAN economy, just a very quick one. Just to let you understand the size of the ASEAN economy. ASEAN comprises 10 countries, right? 685 million people, GDP of about 3.8 trillion US dollars. Assumption, demand for steel is roughly about 74 million tons last year. The largest country in terms of GDP is Indonesia. Right, so that is 1.37 trillion, which is on the number 2 there. Right, so today they are the 2nd largest producer of steel this is the demand in ASEAN. Okay, so the largest countries in terms of steel demand: Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand. Supposed to be Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore. Singapore being the smallest one. Okay. Now, if you look at the economies of ASEAN, how have they been running? So, if you look at Indonesia, the first one on the right side, Indonesia's economy has remained strong for a number of years, and it only went down during COVID. Right? After that, it came back up. It's still running very strong. Similarly, you see all the ASEAN economies are growing today. Okay, they are slowing down because of issues around the world. You've got high interest rates, you've got the ongoing geopolitical tensions and all that. So, still doing well, but slowing down. This is a very quick one on construction sector and manufacturing sector. On the construction sector, you see, again, for the whole of 2023, construction sector is booming across ASEAN. We are all catching up with the new projects coming up. Those that have been left behind, which except for Thailand. Thailand's case is a little unique. Thailand, you can see it's a purple color columns, 0.6 reduction last year. That's more to do with political crisis in Thailand. They keep changing government. They throw out the old prime minister, and now they throw out the second one. So that's the main thing there. But otherwise, good, but again, slowing down. Exports are affected. Because the global demand is slowing down, as you are aware. Right? So that's why you see in some countries which are more export-oriented, the growth has gone down to negative. Okay, this is a messy chart. What's trying to tell you is that interest rates, inflation is being controlled all over the world, especially around ASEAN. But you can see on the right side, policy rates have remained high, not coming down. And of course, interest rates have this lagging effect. Which is now affecting the economies around ASEAN as well. What do we see for 2024? 2024 will be, again, not a bad year. Economy will continue to grow, but all the growth rates have been revised downwards every time we do a forecast. Okay, very much in line with global demand and all that. Okay, so very quickly. This is just a few slides to show you what's going on on the economy side of ASEAN. I have got more details, and I'll run through as fast as I can. On the ASEAN steel market, ASEAN steel market is not a big market at the moment. We are still developing. Right? The peak is about 80 million tons in 2019, 2018. You can see on the chart there, the biggest is Vietnam, 21.2 million tons. Second biggest is Indonesia, 70.6. Third biggest is Thailand, 16.1, Philippines 9.4, Malaysia 6.7, and Singapore is very small at 2.9. Right, so if you just remember some of these numbers later, we'll talk about capacity and things like that. I'll repeat again, right? So you understand what's going. So it's growing. It came down a bit, but not too bad. This year, we expect the market to be a little softer. Okay. Mostly a lot of production here. This slide looks interesting in the sense that you can see half of the demand from ASEAN is supplied through production. Okay, and a little bit extra, not half, I mean 50 million tons. Right? It's in terms of production, and the rest of it, 23.4 are the net imports. But it is, if you look at the details behind it, it's a little more interesting. Long products, flat products, you can see that for long product sector, right, the ASEAN's long product sector is largely supplied by the local production. We have an overcapacity in that production. Whereas for the flat product sector, there are a lot of imports. Okay, hot rolled coils, other value-added flat products like coated sheets and all that, which are not available in ASEAN. We don't produce enough of it. We import most of this. Okay. This chart shows you now the breakdown from the net imports into imports and exports. Okay. On the import side, what it tells you here is that if you remember, the total demand for 2023 was 74 million tons. But if you look at the imports for 23, it's 47.5 million tons. So on the whole, ASEAN imports roughly about 60 to 70% of its demand every year. That is significant and is huge in terms of imports. But also, you know, we are becoming one of the biggest export region in the world. And you can see from the slide on the right side, the green columns, Vietnam is the big one. Second one is Indonesia. And third one is Malaysia. Huge jump in exports for the simple reason that we have an overcapacity situation in ASEAN, and it has led to massive exports of products around the world. Okay, so of course, I'm sure you've heard of us, Vietnam for hot rolled coils in particular, and of course, wire rods from Indonesia, from Malaysia, and mainly these few countries, and I'll come to a bit more detail later. Right? So, okay, so development trends, what are the things affecting ASEAN? Okay, so of course, EU CBAM is going to affect us, not in the way that you think of, but I'll just run through, okay? Now, this slide, you've seen it, so I'm not going to go through it. We have an expert here who have spoken about it. But looking at the impact of CBAM on ASEAN, you know, we do not export a lot of steel to EU. We don't, right? So these are a mix of everything, right? Bituminous coal, wire rods, galvanized sheets, cold rolled coils, yeah. They are very small, you know, they're very small, even 2-point-something million from the different countries compared to what EU imports, right? So the countries that are going to be affected will be Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. More Indonesia and Malaysia. More Indonesia and Vietnam, you see. But the key point about CBAM is what gets the government thinking about CBAM, right? And the question is I have there, right? So the first question they ask is, why should we allow potential tax revenues to go to Europe? So I should tax them now, right? I should tax my companies now rather than have this revenue to disappear to Europe. That's point number one. Point number two is that the moment you can tax all those funds, right, we can use these funds to fund the decarbonization effort of the industry, right? And the third one is, if exports cannot get into EU, then where will the steel go to? So the carbon leakage will be everywhere else, right? And if the countries are going to implement carbon tax, it is very likely that they will implement a local CBAM. It's very logical, right? So, UK is looking at CBAM in 2027. Australia will make a decision in September. US is looking at it, Canada is looking at it, and I'm telling you, ASEAN is also looking at it. We are the closest to China, you know, so any impact from China will come to us, right? So there are a lot of debates about, you know, the CBAM, fair, unfair, and, you know, whatever it is. what I tell people is, it's here to stay. Get used to it. I heard a lot of comments over the last few years. I even attended an event where they brought in the lawyers. They're going to take EU to court, WTO, and all this stuff. But I just told them, get used to it, because it will be here, and we expect more and more countries to implement CBAM. Next one is China, the favorite topic. Right. So every time I talk about China, so don't throw stuff at me, okay? We are looking at this thing, at China, as the part of the impact on ASEAN. Right? What goes on in China affects us. So this is a particular. This particular one tells us the history of what has gone on affecting ASEAN. If you read the right side of the chart, right? In 2006, China became a major steel exporter. Right? 2010, the economy slowed down a little bit. And 2010 was a very critical timeline for ASEAN. It was a time when all our FTAs were affected. FTAs with China, with India, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries all started on January 2010. Right? When you have an FTA, I don't know if there are any trade proponents here, but when you have FTA coming in, it means your window is open. It's a matter of time when the rain gets in. Okay? So then 2013, you can see you got boron steel issues, right? The subsidies that China got, when the producers declare their products as alloy steel, they get subsidies of about 23% up to 28% for their steel products. Okay, so that was what I call the first export, that's the second export tsunami. Okay, then of course you got the Belt and Road initiatives, global trade actions, and then the supply side reform came in sometime in 2016. That was the time China decided that we should reduce capacity for all the sectors that are in overcapacity: aluminium, cement, steel. Right? So it started in 2016. First thing they did was they cut off all the induction furnaces. And some of these came to ASEAN in the form of investments. Second thing was they closed down all the small mills, anything below 1 million to 3 million, they were not interested, they closed everything down. Right? China can do these kind of things, right? They closed everything down, and you see the investments started to come to ASEAN. Okay? Then they came in and said, okay, I'm going to go green. I have a net zero commitment. Right? And then there were very good policies on going into EAFs, using more scrap. Right? And then they have this capacity swap policies. I think you have all heard about it. What is interesting about the capacity swap policies is that the government has recently recognized that it doesn't work. The way it has been implemented is not that successful. Capacities have not come down, so they've stopped it. They've suspended that program. Okay, 2022 RCEP starts. RCEP is a regional comprehensive economic framework policy. Yes, so that's for free trade around ASEAN. Now, in other part of the world where whoever who wants to join, a number of countries have joined that one. The critical part about RCEP is that it's not so much about the trade in goods and services because it is already in the FTA agreement. What is most critical is the chapter on investments. And this policy, this agreement was set up at a point in time when China and the US had a lot of problems with Huawei, if you remember Huawei, right? So after that, China started to look at how to protect investments, and those terms and conditions about not nationalizing companies or investments or putting restrictions on any investments has gone into the RCEP. Okay, so which means that now they can invest without hindrance. Okay, now this is a complex slide. It's a slide on capacity, the red one. So you can see that China's capacity since 2010 has come down only a little bit. in spite of all the policies they've put in. Okay? The blue line going up is capacity utilization. So in the earlier years, capacity utilization is more around 50, 60%, but towards the recent years, they're all above 80%. Right? You can see that in terms of in 2018, 2017, demand started to go up. There was a turnaround in the market, and production also increased at the same time. And when we look at overcapacity, the excess capacity here, it was humongous until 2017, but because of increasing demand, it has come down to a minimum in 2021. Right? So the demand has solved the problem of overcapacity in recent years. But of course, now we have another problem, right? Real estate is not doing well, you have heard from earlier. Real estate is doing badly, and it's starting to come up again. Okay? So the way I look at the strategy is like this. Number one is in the past, I have a lot of overcapacity, but I try to reduce my production. That's why utilization is low. But now the strategy is I increase my utilization and I export. That's the way to keep costs low, right? You get economies of scale, but of course the rest of us will suffer as we go along. Okay, so the numbers are bad, but it could get worse. But let me go back to the other slide. So the first tsunami was actually before the global financial crisis. The second one was this one, the boron alloy steel time, 2012 to 16. This is the third one. This is the third tsunami that is coming. I heard that in August of this year, China's export of steel has exceeded 10 million tons. So it is likely they are going to hit above 100 million tons this year. Is the real estate sector going to improve? I doubt it. It's so bad that Pawu themselves have warned the industry that there's a severe crisis coming up. Right? So in ASEAN, we take it that probably in the next 1-2 years, it is not going to be looking good at all. Right? So instead of complaining about China, the question is, what do you do about it? Right? Because it's here, it's going to stay. Right? Now, this is a chart, another complicated chart, right, about export to ASEAN. Right? You see how much is it? You see, so if you think that you get hit badly, ASEAN gets worse because China exports roughly about 26 to 30% of their steel to ASEAN. We are the nearest neighbor. Right? You can see it hit a peak in 2016 where we took in 36 million tons, which is 34% of exports from China. Right? So it has gone down and it's come up again at 25 million tons. But what is interesting here is the shift in products. Right? So in the past, you look at more than 50% are in the long product sector, bars and wire rod. But after that, they have shifted. And now it's more towards hot rolled coil and coated sheets. Right? So what China has done, you see, the remarkable thing about the industry is that China's players know how to adapt. They will shift. The question I have to everybody, including the people in ASEAN steel industry, is, why haven't you? Why haven't you? What happened in China was in these years of 18, 19, 20, the good years, they were already planning to shift more into flat products. Now, if you have gone through the news, you see that they built a number of hot rolled coil plants in 22, 21. So they were shifting. And the market also has shifted. Okay, so the market has shifted because the building sector has gone down. Right? So where they have shifted to? They have shifted to, actually I have a chart, but I didn't put it inside here. Okay, but they have shifted into infrastructure and machinery. Okay, so they have shifted. Why haven't all of us? You see? Right, so that's why I put a question, is another export peak coming? I think the answer is yes. We are going to see more of this thing, but it is hitting ASEAN a little less because they don't sell so much hot rolled coil, I mean, not so much long products anymore, because ASEAN, we are mostly long products. Okay, so those countries that take a lot of coated sheet and hot rolled coils, you're going to face the brunt of Chinese exports. Okay, so this is to do ASEAN. Net zero commitment, everybody has a net zero goals. Indonesia and Vietnam have increased their commitment. They have been more ambitious. So a lot of things are expected to come up. There is an ASEAN-wide plan already about how to decarbonize. Okay, so there are a lot of points about what are we going to do. They are going to target the sectors in certain priorities. Number 1, energy sector. Number 2, transport. Number 3, industry. So the focus is on energy first. And that's where the policies are being introduced. Not all of them up yet, but they're coming, being unrolled. And we are going to see more of them coming up in the next couple of years. And I think the most significant one is carbon tax. Singapore started a carbon tax in 2019 at $5 a ton, roughly about 370 US a ton. Today is 25 dollars a ton. Okay, it's very, very significant. Okay, so eventually, I think we'll go through with an ASEAN-wide emission trading system linked to the EU trading system somehow at a later stage. Okay, so this is ASEAN. This is a complicated map. Right? This is a map of all the investments, especially the big investments from around the world, okay, coming into ASEAN. Let me explain how to read this chart. First thing, the colors. Red color boxes are Chinese investments. The white color boxes are local. Blue and beige are big joint venture, but non-Chinese. Okay? So if you were to look at the history of ASEAN and how big projects have come up, it started in 2014 with Krakatau POSCO, which I've highlighted here. Number 1. Before 2014, 3 million tons of capacity was unheard of in ASEAN. Unheard of. None. We never have those. So Krakatau POSCO started the first one with 3 million tons of plates. Next is Formosa Hatin, 7.5. Right? After that is Alliance Steel, 3.5. They got a license for another 6.5. Right? Number 4 is Hofat Group, which is of course now becoming the largest steel producers in ASEAN. Right? Tersin Steel, one of the most impacting one is Tersin, which is a Chinese investment with 4 million tons. 3 million tons came up last year. They are planning for another 14 million tons. Okay? And the list goes on. Right? We are happy for a lot of investments because ASEAN is a popular place. It's a growing place. It's a growing economy. But this is not a happy problem. We have a huge overcapacity here. Right? So how does it look like in the overall picture? This is how it looks like. If you take all those things into account, everything to start up, if you assume everything starts up, we are looking at about 100 million tons coming up to the year 2030. And out of this 100 million tons, 83.6 are blast furnaces. I think you can tell from the color, right? Red blast furnaces, green EAFs. Okay? And some of these are, unheard of. Take, for example, Malaysia. Right? Earlier, we mentioned Malaysia's demand was 6.7 million tons. They already have a capacity of 16.1 million tons. But they are heading for 57. Okay? So there's a huge shift. And this huge shift, if all the investment comes up, it's totally unsustainable. Even today's rate, you can see that exports are going up. So can you imagine what happens if all these things come? Brace yourself for the worst. It's going to come. right? So this is a big issue in ASEAN. That is why I have been spending a lot of effort speaking about this issue at all levels everywhere to make sure everybody is aware. The information we get are from public sources that people have announced. There are, of course, proposals that have not been announced. So there could be more, okay? So what we hope to do is to tell people this is a situation, so you better think carefully about your investments and make a wise decision, okay? So in addition to this problem is here. Starting from 2011, we are mostly green. Green is EAF, right? So the red one is blast furnaces, right? So if you look at the other chart, you can see that 95% of your crude steel capacity in 2011 was from EAFs. 5% from blast furnaces. As at 2022, it is 65 EAF and 29 blast furnaces. And if you were to go all the way to 2030, if everything comes up, you're looking at the other way around, right? 39% emissions will be coming from EAF, and blast furnaces will be 58%. So this is what I call the de-greening of the ASEAN steel industry, based on all the investments coming up. Now, if you were to multiply that factor, blast furnaces 2.33, I use World Steel's numbers, right? And EAFs 0.68. So it looks like this. So in terms of emissions, blast furnace emissions will overwhelm the whole industry's emissions, right? And it will be the predominant source of emissions in ASEAN from the steel industry. So what do you think must happen? It's very obvious, right? The first thing to happen is to stop the blast furnaces. You don't have a choice. Huh? Countries facing this, what do? You just have to stop the blast furnaces. There's no other choice. So everybody must shift to the cleaner energies. Right? So now it's up to the governments. Now this issue about emissions and overcapacity in ASEAN has been raised to the ASEAN Secretariat. It has gone up to ASEAN level. It has also been raised through the Ministry of Industry in Malaysia, and they will have a discussion on this moving forward. Okay, what next? Okay, so this is a summary of what I just put forward for everybody. Right, so global challenges is there. EU CBAM is coming. Okay, you can go to court and whatever is here to stay. Right, China factor affects us. Okay, supply reform is shifting capacities overseas. Now, before I go any further, I think I must also qualify. Right? There's been a lot of talk about China this, China that, and all those things. But the bulk of the investments in ASEAN from China are from the private sector, not SOEs, private sectors. So please don't go and blame the government. What happens behind the scene and all that, I have got no idea, right? But all of them that you see, Alliance Steel, Wonan Steel, and all those, private sector. Tsingshan Steel is private sector. But now they are the biggest exporter of stainless steel in the world. Private sector, not government. Okay? Now, supply reform. So exports are expected to rise in the near term, I'm very sure. Right? Policy changes, yes, we are facing it. Not now, but policies are being rolled out. Overcapacity in ASEAN is a reality. It is no longer a risk. It is here today. It is here today. Right? Trade action is going to come up in ASEAN because we are busy exporting to each other, especially long products. And I've also seen the profile from Turkish exporters. You used to be quite significant exporters to ASEAN, roughly about 600, 700, over 1,000 tons year by year. But now the quantity has dropped down very, very low. But that is because of our overcapacity in ASEAN, as well as overcapacity in China, that you have a very severe export competition. Okay, shift to carbon-intensive BOF system. Yeah, there are some new green steel projects coming up, but early stages. So what I will always recommend to our members in ASEAN is, number one, I think the most important thing is how do we stop the influx of exports coming into your country. Right? So you need to speak to your government, how to engage your government on how to manage all these things, either through trade remedies or whatever. Right? Now is the time, I think, it's also a good time to talk to your governments about policy for the green market, whether it's a market demand, whether it's a carbon tax or whatever. It's a time to engage the government, to influence the policies. Tell them what you want, better than have them tell you what to do. Okay? Prepare for a carbon pricing world. It's here to stay, including CBAM, EPD, CBAM, and all those things are going to be very common. And I think we should all start looking at a long-term plan for decarbonization in whatever ways, because the changes will come soon and it's going to hit very fast and very hard. That's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yovijin, for your presentation. It was very nice. Do you have any questions from the floor? We don't have too much time, but maybe a couple ones. No? So may I ask you just one question, because a very interesting topic is export, as you mentioned, that ASEAN countries, they are really active in export. And we see that there are new capacities coming. I mean, Dexon just started HRC production this year recently, and we expecting some mill also for flat steel in Malaysia. Also, the construction started in the Philippines. So do you think that ASEAN will be more active in the flat export, even taking into account the high competition with Chinese mills?
Yes. Will it be more exports coming? Yes, for sure. I've said it already, right? So I've said right now with Tersin Steel, you all pronounce it as Texin, 3 million tons that came up last year, they've been flooding the market with wire rods. End of this year, 2 million tons of hot rolled coil capacity will come up in Indonesia from Tersin Steel as well. Another 2 million tons will come up in Malaysia from Eastern Steel. Beginning of next year, we have 2.8 million tons from Hofat Phase 2 Part 1 project, and another 2.8 million tons at the end of next year of 2.8 million tons also from Hofat. Right? So I don't know how the market is going to change. I think you mentioned that hot rolled coil production may go down. But I think we don't know how it's going to turn, because a lot of hot rolled coil capacities will be coming up this year and next year. So yes, exports are here to stay for some time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.